Hi Dixons, I'm Luke Sparks, Executive Director here at Dixons. Today I'm at Dixons Unity Academy. Few of our principals can claim more affiliation to the community they serve than Danny Carr, who I believe is quite literally married into the community here at Armley. And what an incredible community it is. The school, the students, the families have really embraced Dixons and have every right to be so proud of what is being achieved here. Without question, this is a school to watch. And I'm delighted to be joined by Danny, Principal here at Dixons Unity, as we continue our mini-series within the Growth Playlist on our new approach to strategic planning here at Dixons. If you have not watched the first two episodes on Big Moves, which explore the levers that can increase the chances of your strategy succeeding and the shifts that can dramatically improve the quality of your strategic dialogue, then I would recommend that you take a look at those videos before watching this episode. In this video, Danny will talk you through how he and his leadership team applied our fresh approach to strategy. It should provide a really practical insight into this new way of thinking that I talked through in episodes 1 and 2. So, Danny, you've been working through this new approach to strategic planning for the last 6 months or so. So can you tell us how you found it?
Yep. I found it to be liberating in a strategic sense, to be honest. Freedom from the usual constraints of your annual academy development planning has been a really big thing in my view, because it's encouraged a more dynamic approach with a greater level of focus and more depth in defining and developing our big moves. As well, it's encouraged us to be a lot bolder in our thinking around strategy. The myriad of strategies and timelines were all stripped away and then replaced by more debate and strategic thinking in our leadership team meetings, and that was a really important feature for us. I also thought the approach was more collaborative than our previous approach. Before it would be very much led by me and almost dictated by me, but this was a real collaboration of the senior team and even some middle leaders, and then also working with the executive team and my executive principal. All ideas were presented to the executive board, and I received feedback on that, and that was also an important part of the process, that feedback loop, and that really helped me and my team to hone in on the things that would have the greatest impact. So as a turnaround school, this was really important in helping us to drive change through the key strategic levers. And the process was a really enriching process. It was a refreshing experience. And it forced us to move beyond short-termism, and it bolstered incremental improvements with some really high leverage and radical strategies and really different way to approaching strategy to anything that I'd ever experienced before.
Thanks, Danny. As you know, there are several stages to the process, and it would be great to get your reflections on each of them. Let's just start with the first group of levers, your endowment, what you start with. How did you prepare for and carry out that stage?
Well, this is a challenging one. You can't change your endowment, but what you start with does matter in terms of your chances of getting even better. So you have to analyse your endowment and then make sure that you make the most out of it. So the analysis was an incredibly detailed process which focused on the current position of the school and the things that we inherited from the predecessor academy. And that was the good and the bad. For instance, the student number on roll, the building, the assets, the behaviour system. And this involved a great number of people, including my senior team, my executive principal, the executive board, in addition to a number of members of staff across the academy, and also external stakeholders such as our cluster services that were a big part of supporting the academy. And it was such a vital stage because everything we've done as part of the turnaround journey has started with an analysis of our endowment, and it was a feature of every meeting that we had over the first 9 months of me being here in this academy. Attention to detail is really important, because a reflection on our endowment continued to be important even as we went through the process of forming our big moves, from the strategic issues live list through to consideration of the initiatives that would take us forward from our starting point. So with support of the exec, we then did a teardown of past results, and that helped us to map our current position and see what came from previous strategic moves and actions as well as analysing our admissions data, our demographics, and our other community indicators. So the strategic issues live list came from that analysis, and we were able to then produce a live list of our most important strategic issues and our critical challenges. And this was all formed around that initial analysis of our endowment. So over the past 6 months, this live list has been a part of every meeting, from governors' meetings through to our strategic meetings, meetings with middle leaders, and all strategic dialogues that we have in the strategy room. So these regular strategy conversations help us to dynamically track our big moves and our initiatives. So that means that we can do more, be more nimble and agile, and we're better able to then update the strategy in order to respond to the challenges and the opportunities that arise.
Great, thanks Danny. We know that not being clear about what actually drives performance in your academy does let the social side of strategy rear its ugly head, and that can, and that can cause many flawed strategies. So armed with that thorough, unbiased understanding of what has been driving performance, alongside riding the right trends, you developed your 2 to 5 year master plan. Can you talk through how that stage worked for you?
Yeah, the development of our 2 to 5 year master plan was another eye-opening moment for us. Again, it was really refreshing. It was really focused approach in comparison to what we'd done before with academy development planning. And the 5-year trajectory, that really helped us move beyond short-termism and incrementalism, and it ensured that we had clear and bold aspirations for the next 5 years. So we started off with curriculum. So the first part of our master plan was to create an ambitious curriculum which gives learners of all needs and all backgrounds the powerful knowledge and cultural capital to succeed in life. The second thing then after that was to improve the culture of the school and build an excellent reputation for challenging educational disadvantage, leading to the school becoming oversubscribed. After that, it was about the educational outcomes. So it was achieve educational outcomes significantly above national. Then build a national reputation for working with our community to challenge social disadvantage. And then, last but not least, complete a school improvement journey that leads to the school being used as a model for turnaround success within Dixons and beyond. So you can see the sort of the process and the flow through those that strategic master plan. So the master plan slide is presented at the beginning of every strategic meeting that we have, and that helps us to keep it right at the forefront of our mind every time that we meet. And I think that the trajectory helps leaders to remain sharply focused on the big moves that they can make to achieve our bold aspirations that we have.
Okay, and this 2 to 5 year master plan, as we like to call it at Dixons, is one that you can adjust if you change initiatives, priorities, and big moves. Yeah. And every big move could lead actually to an update of the projected or the expected trajectory of the academy. I think too often, though, leaders use up all their boldness in setting the aspiration, and they have little left when it comes to making the committed strategic choices and moves needed to actually realise that aspirational goal. So once you developed your master plan, your aspiration, what did you do next?
So once we understood our endowment and trends both in our educational and local context, we had our live list and we had our 2 to 5 year master plan in place. We were then ready to start the process of our 3 to 4 big moves and defining those. And we were informed by our live list of strategic issues, and to do this we used a decision grid, and that forced us to discuss and debate options and to consider real alternatives and to shape these big moves instead of working towards a consensus around a plan. It also helped to limit sandbagging, to get bold ideas before beginning the conversation on risk, and we used our analysis of our endowment and trends to calibrate our decisions. So this here is one of our decision grids. I developed the grids alongside my executive principal and with you, Luke, and you gave me some feedback around how I could start to foster stronger debate inside the strategy room, and that was informed by our live list, and our strategic decisions were then clear. But to be honest, I did find it harder to develop the hard to reverse options. I wanted to make sure that the options were bold and that I didn't get bogged down by our own potential biases. I then took the decision grids to my team, and we invested a lot of time and effort in debating the different options and around the various strategic decisions. Some options were thrown out really quickly, and some new ones that I hadn't thought of were raised, which was perfect, which is exactly what I wanted. So the final decision grids now act as a really useful record and a reminder of that debate, of what we decided and how we went through that decision-making process. And they incorporate all the work that we've done in the strategy room. We really enjoyed those sessions and forming those decision grids, especially because of the atmosphere it generated in the strategy room and the knock-on effect that has had every time that we strategise. There was a great deal of healthy conflict. That was really important, and it took us on a journey, exploring each strategic decision at a much deeper level. And this was a level of thinking that would never have happened through our previous approach, and a level of thinking that was essential to the success of the strategic process. Me and my senior team were clear about the challenges we'd give each other before we went into the strategy room, and that was really important, especially if there was going to be any sandbagging or bias in the room. So the last thing that we wanted to do was to be too safe. We kept reminding ourselves that we were looking for the bold, committed breakout decisions that would help us to achieve our aspirations. We didn't want bold moves to be viewed as too risky when we were inside the strategy room, and therefore drop off the list and not be considered at an early stage, and the conversation on risk would then come later. It was crucial for the team to understand that they wouldn't be punished simply by not being successful with a high-risk plan that didn't pan out. And we had at least 4 hour-and-a-half meetings around this, discussing the decision grids, and we developed 3 initial big moves for the next 12 to 18 months from that process. So our first 3 initial big moves are, number 1, improve the culture of the school by creating an alternative provision hub which challenges educational and social disadvantage and is an example to others. Big move 2 was to create an ambitious curriculum which gives learners of all needs and backgrounds the knowledge and cultural capital to succeed in life. And big move 3 is to improve our attendance family engagement strategy. As our approach is now more dynamic, we know that these might change and that more moves might develop and emerge over time. And that's important to realise that there'll be a roster of big moves over the next 5 years that will help us to achieve our aspirations. So these initial big moves were then broken down into realistic initiatives that were achievable in a meaningful time frame, say 6 to 12 months. And then we set milestone markers at 6-month increments, and that helped us shift from long-range planning into forcing the first step. We then tested the plan and talked openly in the strategy room about each of the moves and then the initiatives. And we asked ourselves, is what we need to do in the first 6 months actually possible? And then once we'd clearly established that the first step was doable, we then ensured that we had everything in place to force the first step.
Yeah. And as I talked about in the 2 previous episodes in this mini-series, big moves are breakout opportunities that are hard to reverse. You know, think of them as the things the next management team will have to take as givens. However, some of us did go a bit wrong here actually. You know, our big moves ended up being pretty much a repeat of the 4 sequential steps in the trajectory or the master plan. So it's important to remember that the master plan is your vision really, and the big moves should be the moves you need to make in order to work towards achieving that master plan or that vision. Therefore, we will likely need to make, you know, as you said, you know, several big moves just to get to step 1 or 2 on the master plan. And so I think it's important to be clear, really clear between the difference between the big moves and the master plan. That's definitely an area that we kind of went wrong. So Danny, a key question: if you hadn't used this process, would you have got to the same solutions?
No way. No, not at all. I think it was debating the real alternatives that gave us the encouragement to consider bolder risks. And, you know, riskier moves meant that we were pushing the envelope much further than, you know, under previous approaches of academy development planning. Previously, we'd have created safer plans that were, sure to achieve and which were likely to have resulted in timid strategy. So as a principal of a turnaround academy, it can often be very, very easy to be short-termist. It can also be easy to bring in too many new initiatives, and this process that we used helped us to be really bold and aspirational, but also to keep things simple and pared back. I think it's also important to note that big moves will be relative to your context, so some of our big moves might not appear as risky or as bold as some higher performing, more stable schools in our trust. And a turnaround at Dixon's will focus its big moves on improvement through alignment to the backbone. Whereas a more stable academy may focus on growth opportunities and exercising its autonomy.
So what did you find the most challenging, Danny?
So the most challenging aspect was to ensure that we avoided the pitfalls of the strategic planning process, especially when we were working as a team in the strategy room. However, the process constantly forces you to reflect and to challenge yourself to ensure that you're focused on moves that are big enough to fill the gaps between the momentum line and the aspiration. It helps you to push back against things like bias, sandbagging and peanut butter. So rather than spreading your resources thinly, you deploy your resources decisively to the most promising initiatives. I also think that leaders can be adrenaline junkies, particularly in turnaround contexts. And the payoff and reward of seeing a strategy succeed is a really addictive process, and it can lead to a lack of patience or speeding through the process of developing strategy, and it's essential to avoid that. However, seeing strategy as a journey, it really helps because you can road test your strategy and ensure that you're battle ready before you introduce it. And you also know that every month the strategy can be updated, and this is a more dynamic approach that for me makes it more likely that you're going to succeed. So even if you don't succeed, the greater sense of shared ownership of strategy and the fact that probabilities of success will be a prominent part of strategic discussions and performance reviews means that the team know that noble failures are absolutely fine. So all we do is a tear down of that, and then we go again.
So finally, as you know, we now see, and you've said it a few times, see strategy as a journey, and it's an inherently messy one at that, particularly in turnaround. So when you come to refresh, which could be at any point, what will you do differently, do you think?
So we're actually in this process right now of using our live list to refresh our roster of big moves, especially in terms of the COVID context. So this for me is the strength of this approach, that we're able to see strategy as a journey. And that means that we're able to be agile and respond to what's going on around us, rather than being tied to a fixed 2-year academy development plan that's over 14 or 15 pages. At the moment, I'm always worrying, are we being bold enough? Are we taking those calculated chances that will deepen and intensify our school improvement journey? And that's a question that I keep asking myself as we refresh, before asking the rest of the team to reflect on our initiatives and how we can refine them to have even greater impact. I also think that the social dynamics of our strategy room will continue to change for the better. The more that we operate in this way, the more we'll be able to leverage the key 8 shifts and address the social side of strategy. We are on a challenging journey, but I do believe that we've made the right bets and that this fresh approach to strategy, it increases our odds of success.
Yeah, you're doing an incredible job, Danny, and I think you're odds on to succeed. So thanks so much for providing such a practical insight into this new way of thinking. I know colleagues thinking of using this new approach will have found your reflections really invaluable. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and that you will join us for the next episode in this mini-series, when I will be joined by another of our exceptional principals who will talk through their big moves and how they applied this new way of thinking to their strategic planning. Don't forget to subscribe to Dixon's Open Source, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.